everyone, welcome back to Shreya's podcast. Joining us today is a very special guest whose life story reads like a movie and yet speaks directly to all the challenges that we face in our day to day lives. Mark Greene is a former Navy SEAL, a mentor, and an author of the book Unsealed, a Navy SEAL's guide to mastering life's transitions. Mark's journey has been full of profound transitions, from a college athlete to college dropout, from SEAL training to an enlisted SEAL, and from sniper to civilian life. Although Mark has a unique story, I'm sure that his insights in the book are universal and applicable to all. For all our listeners, especially international students who are navigating their own transitions, I'm sure that you will find a lot that you can relate to, not only in Mark's book Unsealed, but also in this podcast. Stay tuned and follow this episode to know about Mark's journey, and I'm sure that you will find multiple experiences to relate as well as learn from. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark, and it's such a pleasure to talk with you.
Hi, Shreya. I'm so happy to be able to join you. And with our background, this is the first time we're actually speaking face to face.
Yes, it's so weird that I've been speaking to you, I guess, since last year, but today is the first time that I'm getting to talk with you like over a video call, and it feels so different and so good to see you in person.
Yeah. I was I when I saw that I was going to be on the show, I realized like we haven't actually we've spoken on the phone several times, but never video. So it's really exciting to finally talk to you and see you after talking for about a year.
Yeah, and thank you so much for agreeing to take out some time to do this because I think your story is so important and it's going to motivate so many international students who are planning and navigating their own transitions. So I want to dive into your story right from the beginning. So I know
Okay.
that you were a college athlete, a quarterback, and you were at the top of your game. And then comes a shoulder injury that turns everything around. So, how did it feel for you at that particular point when you already had something going on for you in a great direction and something unplanned comes your way and changes everything? How did you handle that?
Well, I did not handle it well. I was 20 years old and I'd been playing football since I was 9. And football was my whole life. It was the reason I went to college. And I didn't have a plan for not playing football, at least through college. So when my injury happened with 3 years left for me to play, I was really devastated. I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't have a plan for what to do next. So I just was, I didn't have any direction for the first time. I didn't have a schedule. I didn't have anything to do, no practice, no coaches yelling at you. It was just one day you're an athlete, and then the next day you're just a student. So it was really challenging. And went into a little bit of a depression with the loss of that lifestyle and the life that I had had. But my best friend Jeff quickly told me that, hey, don't worry about it. We're gonna go be Navy SEALs after we're done with college.
And yeah, I know that you mentioned that your friend mentioned to you that you're going to go and become Navy SEALs. So was that
Yeah.
like an instant plan B for you? Because I do know that you saw a particular video that turned out to
Mhm.
be a point in your life that gave you a whole new set of direction, something that maybe you were not thinking to do from the start. But when you saw that video, I want to hear from you what that video was about and why you decided to go and become a Navy SEAL when you were an athlete for so long.
Well, it was, I hadn't, well, okay. So my father and grandfather were in the military. So going into the military was always an option. And I thought about it, but I was still hopeful that my football career would be I'd still something I'd still be able to do. But after seeing the doctors, they said, "Yeah, you're not going to be able to throw anything forever." And when Jeff showed me this video, everything about it, how difficult becoming a SEAL was, how few people graduated, I should have run away, right? And said, wow, that's a cool video. I'm never doing that. But it had the complete opposite effect. I was drawn to it in a way that I hadn't been drawn to anything before. And really, what drew me to it was the fact that it's the toughest training in the world, and you have a chance to be unique and special. And my mom had always said that one day you're going to be special one day, and I wasn't achieving that. And with this video encompassed all those things that I wanted to do. I wanted to be special. I wanted to take the biggest challenge of my life and see if I was physically and mentally strong enough to do it.
Yeah, and I know that like you decided to take that leap and go into SEAL training, which is one of the most grueling programs that is out there. And you also mentioned in your book going through Hell Week and how tough
Mhm.
that is. So, can you like share with us what were the things that you had to do as a part of Hell Week, and was it easy for you having been an athlete before, or was it like you also had to make a lot of changes to your routine to be able to adjust to the SEAL life or the SEAL training?
Well, so parts of it helped, like because you do everything as a team, then that part was easy, because I'd been part of a team my whole life. And there are so many people out there who working with the team and to be accountable for your actions to make sure that everybody's successful. That's not how everybody sees life, or even though it's a part of the SEAL team, right? It's people are just like, no, I want to do this thing as an individual, which never works. So when you're going through Hell Week, it's 120 hours. It starts on Sunday and ends on Friday, and they schedule 3 hours of sleep the whole week.
Wow.
Yeah, so it is, you're up all the time. You're pushing yourself so far beyond your limits, which is what one makes SEALs unique with that selection process, because when you're going to combat, you need people who are so driven and so focused that are not going to quit or not going to give up when there's a lot of adversity and discomfort. That um, the only way to test that is through that Hell Week phase. So I didn't have a hard time with Hell Week per se, but the cold water was it almost makes you crazy because there's no escape from it, right? And part of what they do is called surf torture, which you lock arms with everybody in the class and you just sit in the ocean and let the waves crash on you, and you're just miserable. And you're hypothermic, you're shivering the entire time, you're experiencing pain like you've never experienced. And it's really it's training you that you can dig deep enough with enough discipline and motivation that you can accomplish anything. And with the 166 people that graduated or started our class, only 36 of us made it through Hell Week. And then finally, only
Whoa.
18 of us graduated the program. Yeah.
That's
So
like
it was,
such a small percentage.
yeah, yeah. So there was a lot of pride in being one of the few who made it, but I was also very disappointed because I didn't feel any different. I thought I was going to be special in some way, or this would prove that I'm shedding the old Mark and then the new Mark's going to arrive and just feel differently. But Shreya, I didn't feel any differently. And one of my instructors said, whatever you've experienced throughout your life, you've been a SEAL the entire time. This program in SEALs and Hellwick is not really for you. And he turned around and pointed, and there are over 100 helmets of people who had quit. right? And people who just being a SEAL wasn't for them. And he said, Buds and Hell Weekend, that's for those guys over there. That's not for you. So you're not going to feel any different. And once he said that, it made so much sense that I was like, okay, that makes sense. And my depression went away. And I knew there were several points where I knew I was going to make it. But that one meeting with that instructor helped me understand what it was all about. And then once I understood it, um, I was motivated all over again.
Would you say that your mindset played a very important role in determining how successful you were going to be in through that particular rigorous hell week? Because, like you said, it wasn't easy physically, but even if somebody would make it physically and did not have the correct set of mindset, it wouldn't be possible to get through. And like your instructor said, that you've been a SEAL all your life, does that
Hmm.
mean through your mindset and through what your principles were even when you were an athlete before?
Yeah, so my father, the first day at 9 years old, when I first started my first practice, he said, once you start something, you cannot quit because your teammates are relying on you. If you're a star athlete or if you sit on the bench and you never play, once you commit to something, you have to follow through. And as I decided to go to SEAL training, as soon as I checked in to the facility, quitting was not an option. And so once you decide that quitting is not an option, then you really just I took the program into portions that I could manage. Like when you were at USC, right? Um, I'm sure you got there the first time and had your first midterms and said, "Oh my God, I can't do this for 4 years," right? But however you decided to study, or ever how you could take it into portions you could manage, it wasn't overwhelming so much, and it was you divided it into ways that worked for you, that made it sustainable or maybe even easy. But I had to do that as well. So as opposed to looking at it as holistically as a 6 month program, I chopped it up into 4 hour increments because every 4 hours my stomach would growl and I'm like, man, I'm so hungry. And then soon after that, they would send us to eat because they have to feed us every 4 hours. So then it was okay, I don't have to take it as a day or a week or 6 weeks or 6 months. It's really just 4 hour little chunks of time. And again, once it made sense to me, I was like, oh, well, I can do anything for 4 hours at a time. And so with that mentality, I knew I wasn't going to quit for one. And physically, I was capable, and mentally, I was capable, and I knew I wasn't going to quit. So then I'm just working out in Southern California with my best friends. Um, so then it became easy. Not an easy, the training wasn't easy, but it was not, I wasn't overwhelmed by it. And I really had a lot of confidence once I decided um, how to accomplish that task.
Yeah, and there was one particular line in your book that really stayed with me as an international student. You said that you felt an overwhelming fear of success, which means that you felt, what if you got there, but you did not feel that you were good enough? And I feel,
Hmm.
even as an international student, when I decided to come from India to the USA, this was always a feeling with me. Like, what if I make it there, but I cannot adapt? What if I'm not good enough? How did you manage to overcome that feeling and yet go for it? Because that is something that's so difficult to do, like convince yourself otherwise. How did you manage to do it?
Well, and that's such a great question because, it doesn't make sense that I went through this program. You would think that I wouldn't be afraid of success, but I really just I asked so many questions. I really wanted to understand what I was doing. And even though I may not have been the best shooter or wasn't the best, well, I wasn't the fastest runner or the fastest swimmer, Um, I just knew that I could accomplish it, and if I was diligent enough and I worked hard enough, then I would be good enough to be here. But it was so ingrained in me that what if they find out that you're not good enough? You know, what happens then? So I just decided, like, well, they're not going to find out because I'm going to work so hard. So, but that was never the case. I was always successful, but I think that helped me because it helped me be humble and appreciative of where I was, because not everyone got the opportunity to be a SEAL, or in your case, go to USC or come to the US, So I felt really fortunate. And because I felt so fortunate, it really helped me overcome um, the fear of success.
And also in your book, you speak about a lot of different transitions that have happened for you over the last couple of years. Out of that, one has been from being in SEAL training, becoming a SEAL, and then going on to become a sniper. What I see throughout your journey is consistently grabbing opportunities.
Hmm.
Although something new came your way and you were terrified of it, you still went ahead and did it. So, what was the reason that you chose to become a sniper even after becoming a SEAL? Was that a conscious decision that you want to do something different, or did it just happen naturally for you?
So I was not wanting to be a sniper at all. I came back from my
Okay.
deployment, and I was just walking through the compound, and nobody was at the compound because everybody was busy or gone. And I hear this voice yell at me, like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm doing great. Just got back from deployment. I'm gonna reconnect with my family and rest a little bit." He said, "Well, pack up your stuff because we have one other slot for sniper school, and I can't find anybody else, so you're going." So all of a
Wow.
sudden, yeah. So there are people who waited their entire career to go to sniper school, and it's so hard, and it's such a different mindset and skill set that I was afraid of it. So I just didn't want to go anywhere near sniper school. And all of a sudden, fate had it that no, you're going. And had I been 30 seconds on either side of, like, if I left 30 seconds earlier or I left 30 seconds later, that guy would have missed me and I would have never gone to sniper school. And I was a reluctant sniper, basically. But when I got there, it was the same thing. I knew I wasn't qualified for it. I knew that I had a lot to learn as far as shooting goes. But once I was there, when I couldn't quit, and then I just needed to understand it. So, like I did in Buds, I just bugged my instructors. I asked so many questions that finally they said, "Mark, just go away and and just figure it out." But I had to make it make sense to me. So, in that way, I see the world. Let's say I see the world in three dimensions, right? But
Mhm.
I receive information in 2D. So I have to ask questions in order for the information that I'm receiving to make sense to me in that three-dimensional space in which I think. So until I get to that point to where I understand it, then I'll never quite be good at it because I don't understand what I'm doing. So that's why I ask so many questions, and it got me in trouble a lot in sports and with my parents because my parents are very strict, and if you question what they were telling you, it's very disrespectful. However, in my mind, I was like, I'm not being disrespectful. I just don't understand. So please help me understand. And I think because I was slightly socially awkward, that I didn't care that I was bothering them. I just needed to figure this out. And I just asked questions. And once it makes sense to me and the light turns on, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. And then once I get it, then I'm fine. Um, but yeah, I won't move forward until I understand it.
And like from what you just told me, it comes across that you're an extremely curious learner. So until you get something clear in your mind and the way you want to receive the information, you make sure that you will ask all the questions needed. And that's such an important skill set because most of us, when we sit in a class and the professor is explaining something we don't understand, we're just like, I'm not going to put that hand up and, be the dumb one in a class
Yeah.
to ask a question, but very few have the courage to do that. And they are usually the ones who, even though are not the best in the start, but they tend to outperform others because their understanding of the subject becomes so foolproof by developing this habit over the time that nobody can, come close to their understanding and clarity on that particular subject matter. So that's something really useful that you shared that any international student could also make use of in their journey. Also, you mentioned that the skill set and mindset that was needed in sniper school was extremely different as compared to SEAL training. So, how different was it, and what were the major differences according to you?
So let me go back to so I can speak to your international students about asking questions, right? I realized that as mean as the sniper instructors could be, or the SEAL instructors, or professors, their job is to make sure that you're successful, right? That's why they teach. That's why they have tests. That's why they have office hours. So I just said, you're going to earn your money because you're going to make me understand this. And once I decided that, you know, even though it's a very challenging environment, their job is to help. So I make them help me. And I think for international students who may not um, understand, or culturally that may be different, you know, wherever you are, their job is to help you graduate or be successful. So don't, even though it's a scary thing to possibly raise your hand, because when you raise your hand, there's a sigh of relief because so many other people had that question and were just afraid to ask it. And they're like, oh, I'm glad Shreya asked that question, or I'm glad Mark asked that question because I have the same question. I just don't have the courage to ask it. So, and
Yeah.
as far as being a sniper, you are so in tune with the environment at that point because when you're doing regular SEAL stuff, you know, who cares about how windy it is, right? Or who cares what humidity is outside, or if you're in the mountains or if you're at sea level. All those things matter when your one job is to take a shot when you may only have one chance. So you have to understand how the wind's going to affect the bullet you're shooting and how your elevation or how the temperature makes the gunpowder hotter. So when you take a shot in the desert at 120 degrees as opposed to 50 degrees, you know, that affects the round. And if you're, um, everything comes into play, you know, you have to decide what's a human made thing and what's in nature. And humans make things in straight lines, right? Nothing, almost nothing in nature is a straight line. And it just changes your mindset. It's like, what is out of place here? If you're in the jungle and all of a sudden you see a straight line somewhere, it's like, well, that doesn't fit here. Let me give it a little bit more attention. Um, but yeah, it's a completely different mindset. You have to slow everything down, you know, and everything's relevant. So when you are in that mindset where everything is relevant, and the sad part of it is if you're in a combat situation and you're doing the sniper thing, you also have to be very aware that there's a sniper out there looking for you. So, you know, you
Mm.
have to be very meticulous and you have to be very vigilant of how you blend in with your environment. So, you're not really taught that to that degree until you're a sniper. So, it's just a completely different mindset.
So the mindset that you have when you are practicing shooting or the skill of going to sniper school, is it something that changes you for life? Because you mentioned you have to be so observant and vigilant all the
Hmm.
time and aware of whatever is happening in the surroundings. Do you think that it somewhere stays with you even after the training and it becomes like a way of daily life afterwards?
Yeah, so even though I've been out of the SEAL teams for over 8 years, I always feel the wind. I was like, okay, what if I had to take a shot here? Or my life is at 100-yard increments? Or what looks at a place um, in the world right now? Or what's the humidity like? And, I need to sit near the exits because if I don't see the exit, then I can't protect whoever I'm with. Um, yeah, that training never goes away. It's diminished a lot because the environment's a lot safer. But if I go into an environment where I don't feel safe, then all of a sudden all of that comes back at its height, and um, that training never goes away.
Also, throughout your journey, whenever you had these tough setbacks, you also had support of people come your way expectedly or unexpectedly. You also mention in your book how you got a letter of recommendation from one of the Medal of Honors, and you also say that one of the lines that your English teacher had told you back when you were a kid stayed with you for so long that when you published your book, that turned out to be something you always, uh, you know, thought of and translated to in your book. So what do you feel is the impact of like positive mentoring and support from people around you whenever you're going through tough times or transitions in your life?
The mentorship, and when you and I connected, you and I didn't even know each other, and Mrs. O'Reilly was her name, and she said she would not let me be satisfied with not doing my best. And she wasn't always nice, but she was always caring. And when I was writing the book, and she said, "Mark, you're a very talented writer, but you better give it 100% because I was thinking like if she reads this," and she said, "Oh, I taught him so much better than that," um, so that always stayed with me. And then when looking through life and when I transitioned out of the military, there was this gentleman who didn't know me at all and said, "Hey, look, you need to be taken care of. So you're my guy now, and we're just going to make sure you're taken care of." And I was so grateful for that. And then going to USC, where networking and mentorship is really just what makes USC so special. Um, I think it all just starts with gratitude. I was so grateful that somebody was there in my corner that could see my potential or could have the resources or connections to help me. Then I would be doing a disservice to my community if I didn't also take on that characteristic. So when I do speaking events at on campus, I tell the students, I was like, if you call me or you email me, I will always answer. And if you need anything, please let me know because I may not have the answer for you, but I can send you in a direction or make a connection that could land you your dream job or help you out in a way that you weren't aware of before. And, that stuff's so important. And I think that, like I said, that's what really makes USC unique. And if any USC student, alum, whoever reaches out to me, I'm always going to answer and I'm always going to help out. So that's how that changed.
Yeah, and you mentioned a special connection to
Hmm.
USC. I was just going to get to that. I always see you wearing your USC hat wherever you go and also helping Trojans. I was one of the Trojans that you helped in your, uh, you know, contributions to so many other Trojans' life. I know you come to USC to give a talk every year. So, why is it that USC holds such a special place in your heart? if you would like to share that.
Well, USC holds such a special place because as I was transitioning, I was really had problems with post traumatic stress and, you know, leaving my family, my SEAL family, and leaving the military. And once I got to USC, even though I wasn't a student or I wasn't an alum, everyone just opened their arms and said, "We're so happy you're here." And USC was a place of healing for me. I got to almost be a kid again, working on campus. But then my boss said, "Hey, look, I don't have enough work for you, so just go find stuff to do." So that just led
Wow.
me to working with athletics, and I worked with the football team and the tennis team, and then I worked with the Institute of Body Computing, and I worked with a cardiologist, and she was asking me questions on mindset, and I was like, "Why are you talking to? I'm just a caveman." And she's like, "No, your insights are different. I've never asked, got this perspective, and it's really valuable." And then my job at USC, and then there was just there's something so special about that place. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just infectious. And I would get off the train every day, um, and I would step on campus, and I would just have this huge smile on my face, and I was like, "Ah, I'm back on campus." And so I knew that my time there was temporary, and I knew that I wanted to be a Trojan as much as I wanted to be a SEAL when I was young. I wanted to be a Trojan to the same degree. So even though I had MBA from the Naval Postgraduate School, I decided to enroll again to get another master's degree from USC because I wanted to be a Trojan forever. So yeah, the place really very healing for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, USA is that place because I know I reached out to you as a part of the USA family, not knowing you before, and you were so warm and helpful without even knowing anything
Hmm.
about me. You were like, "Oh, what is it that you need? How can I help you?" Like, you were so proactively there as a USC alumni to guide me, and I feel that is what gives you a sense of connection to the university even long after you've graduated or parted your ways, even as a Trojan. So I totally resonate with you on that. And also, I wanted to ask you that in your book, you speak about the 6 phases of
Hmm.
transition, which is isolation, indulgence, cocooning, emergence, grief. I think I got some of them the other way around, but and finally moving to
Hmm.
resolution. So, in those 6 phases of transition, which one would you say was by far the toughest one for you?
The toughest one for sure was grief. You know, because as I was figuring out what I was going to do next, I really didn't have time to go through the grieving process. So even though I was part of the USC family and I was at my dream job, I went through a divorce, right? And I lost that time with my children. And I missed my teammates and I missed my old life as a SEAL. And there was something missing about those 6 phases. And I was like, what's wrong with me? And finally, one day I'm just like, I'm sad that I don't have that anymore. And because in that profession, emotions are pretty much beaten out of you. You can't make any good decisions if you're in an emotional state. So you just have to set grief aside. And when I lost my best friend shortly after um, I was in the SEAL team, I didn't get to process that grief because life just kept moving. When I left the SEAL team, I was Mark the Navy SEAL on Friday, and then just Mark on Saturday. I was not special anymore, and I lost that SEAL team locker room that I knew I was never going to be able to recreate. And I lost my father at a young age, and And I never really got to grieve those things because life just kept moving and I had to keep up with life. So finally, when things got quiet and I knew I was working my dream job, I ended up loving LA. Um, One day I was just like, man, I'm really sad that I've lost so much. And that's when it hit me. Finally, I could grieve all the losses that I had. And then once that was the last solution to the Rubik's Cube, basically. That was the one square that I was missing. And I just allowed myself to grieve the process and everything I'd lost. So once I grieved, then I could finally come to resolution that, hey, even though you've lost a lot, it's okay because what you've gained through this process or just through life is so much more valuable. And finally, once those two things happened, then I was just back to normal. I'm always going to suffer from traumatic brain injury and PTS in some ways, but I don't mourn the life that I lived before anymore. It's great to have had those experiences and with those people that I worked with, but it's okay. It's okay that I'm not an active duty SEAL anymore. That's always going to be part of my life. It's always going to be part of my journey. But I was equally happy to graduate and have that USC diploma as I was with my SEAL graduation diploma.
From what I understand, and whatever you shared right now about the stage of grief
Hmm.
that you went through, I feel that everyone who goes through grief in their life, at times it's just that everything comes together at once and it gets extremely overwhelming. And as an international student, even I felt it at times because I was like, I'm away from home. I don't have anyone I know here. And, and let's say you do bad on an assignment, everything comes together at once. But like you said, at times just saying it's okay, it can be a bad day, a bad week, but you are going to figure it out eventually. To have that sort of confidence within yourself, or at least self assurance that you're going to get things back on track, is sometimes the most you need in those times. And I'm happy to know that, like, even after witnessing so many traumatic experiences, you have managed to create such a positive life for yourself where you are always motivating others around you, helping them in whatever ways you can. And that is something to truly applaud. And I also see that in your book, you have this section called
Hmm.
Life Lessons, where you share different small suggestions that people can implement in their daily life. They look super simple, but I think they're the toughest ones to implement. And the first one, which I wanted to discuss, was being
Hmm.
fully present. Because I feel that in today's world, where technology has taken over, even when someone's watching a movie, half the times we are scrolling something on
Hmm.
the phone, or even if we are trying to read a book, there's a notification that pops up. So, how can someone be fully present today?
Well, to be fully present, it's a choice. You have to choose to put the phone down when you're spending time with friends or when you're reading a book. My children really taught me that because they don't care as children what your needs are because they need to get their needs met. And there are so many times where I wanted to do something else. I didn't want to go to a soccer practice. I didn't want to go to a soccer game. I didn't want to go to a recital. But because it was so important to my kids, it was like, hey, I have to put what I want aside as opposed to what they need. And so once I realized that they just want me to be present, and when I was young, my father was at every football game, and he would wear like a, I think it was a red jacket. He wore it because whenever would look at that sea of people, he would stand out. So once I saw him, I just completely relaxed and was like, okay, Dad's here. And so when I would go to practice, my kids would also be the same way. So I always had a red hat. So whenever I was at practice or at a game, they'd look around frantically and then they'd see my red hat and know, okay, Dad's here. So, that's one of the, it's so simple, right? A red hat, who cares? But for my kids, it was like, hey, Dad's here to watch the game. He's a source of strength and just poise. Everything's gonna be okay when Dad's here. So just, and all four of my kids had the same red hat or a something that was red because it stood out and they just knew their dad was there, and so that's why.
Wow. You also speak about saying yes to things often. So, why would you say that everyone should just go ahead and say a lot of yeses to different things happening? Do you think it played a significant role for you or it helped you in ways you couldn't imagine? How did it change your life when you started saying yes a lot more? And were you always a person who used to say yes instinctively to all the things that were offered to you? Because personally, I feel I'm an extremely hesitant person, so I might not always be upfront and say a yes. But reading that really made me think, oh, maybe that is a trait some of the successful people have, saying yes to things that are just good for them or
Well, when I was
opportunities.
in the Navy, I didn't have a choice. It's like, hey, we need somebody here, so you're going. So, but even then, those opportunities always presented themselves because the first time I went to graduate school, I had flunked out of college, so um, I was just going to go to a course that would let you reconnect with your family. It's a lot of reading, but it wasn't too hard. But the lady who gave us our jobs, she said, "You have three kids, and you need a good job when you retire. So I'm going to send you to get your MBA." And I was like, "No, you're not. No, 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 I'm not going for that." She's like, "No, honey, you're going to be fine." And she hung up the phone and said, "It's too late because you're already in the class. I just put you in." So she said, because she had such vision and said, this is going to be so helpful for you, even though you can't see it right now, years from now, when you say you have a resume of you have an MBA, that's meaningful. So with her, she's like, honey, you just have to say yes. And just throughout my career, when things that I didn't actually want to do sometimes, somebody said, this is a great opportunity, just take it. And when I met my mentor in New York City, he just wanted to help just because. And he gave me his business card and he said, I want to bring you out to LA and you're going to work with my staff and we're just going to figure this out for you. And I got very defensive and said, well, why would you do? I'm a stranger. Why would you help a stranger? So I looked at his card for about a month and then I said, you know what? Let me give him a call because there's no opportunities here. And so I just said, hey, Bill, I'm going to take you up on your offer. And he was so excited to help that he said he booked me a flight and we had an itinerary and it was just the kindest thing. And from that point on, it was just, yes. Hey, Mark, we want you to take a job at USC. I'm like, I don't know what this is going to look like, but okay. Come to this banquet. And then I met the head football coach, and he said, hey, I'm going to give you full access to the athletics. And it was just, yes, opened up so many doors. So even though there are a lot of things I don't want to do sometimes, if I look at it, I was like, well, what if I just say yes to this? What's going to happen? And when I wrote the book, Bob, who sponsored me on it, he kept saying, Mark, you need to write a book. I'm like, no, I don't really want to. There are people with better stories than I have. So finally he called on a Friday and said, hey, I got you four ghostwriters. Interview them and pick your book. And he's like, you have to say yes. And even though I was reluctant to write it, I was like, well, fine, fine, I'll write this stupid book. And then it became a bestseller. And then I started going on podcasts, and my life is completely different all because most of the yeses I weren't forced on me, but the yes to write the book was. And, I get to really help out people that may need it. And I'll never know who I'm helping or who this book reaches, but just to have the opportunity to share my story. And it's not a, I'm the greatest at everything and be a Navy SEAL like me. It's really, hey, these are the struggles I had. These are the tragedies and triumphs that make me who I am. And I really want people to just say yes more because there's so many opportunities that happen. Even though I'm afraid of the outcome a lot of times, I'm more hopeful about what's possible, and so I just say yes to things. And it's been the best. It's been the best one thing I've ever done is just say yes.
Yeah, and like your book has such wonderful insights because it's not just talking about all the stuff that you aced or you achieved, it's also talking about the stuff you did not achieve and how you dealt with that. And it's so real and raw
Hmm.
at the same time. I feel that anyone who reads it will feel a connection to your story, regardless of whether they have been through the exact same things or not. Because somewhere or the other in life, there are things that you really, really want, but they
Hmm.
never work out for you. Like, no matter how much you plan. And at times, there's something totally unplanned which works wonders for you. And then when you look back, you are able to like connect all the dots. So, definitely, like saying yes to more things that even though you feel that in the end, I don't know what the result is, just being hopeful and feeling that there might be light at the end of the tunnel can at times just do wonders for anyone who's approaching anything new and totally different in their life. So, thank you so much for writing this book, which will be a source of inspiration for so
Yeah, well,
many.
thank you, Shreya. And I I was talking with a friend. His name is Jack Carr. He's an author, but he and I went through training together. And I was on a podcast with him. And that's when he told me that he's like, Mark, you're never gonna know how many lives you touch with your story. And so I'm just very hopeful that over the course of time, it's that the book reaches on a micro level. I wanted to reach service members, but on a macro level, I the stories that are in there are human stories. I just happen to be a SEAL, and I want that to resonate with students because I went to USC and USC's hard. It's not an easy institution, and if you're prepared and you persevere, um, you're going to be successful. And my boss, his name is Mark, also, when I was like, Mark, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to graduate. It's so hard. And he just looked at me and said, Mark, if you're good enough to get in to USC, you're good enough to get out. And at that point, I was like, huh, I never thought of it that way. So once it resonated with me and connected the dots, then I was like, okay, I'm going to graduate. I don't know how, um, because I was commuting from LA to Virginia every 2 weeks. So I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get this done, but I'm good enough to get in, and so I'm good enough to get out. So I'm going to figure it out. And I think because it was so hard and I had so many obstacles, that's why it's such a source of pride to have graduated because it was hard, and sometimes I feel undeserving of it. Um, yeah, because I having flunked out of college, the university I went to was a good university, but it wasn't USC, and every once in a while I had that whisper of that fear of success, like I hope nobody finds out that USC was hard for you, and but the rewards of it are outweigh anything else.
From what I understand, you're extremely modest and like you practice humility. So just underplaying yourself all the time, because I think people who are around you will always notice that extra spark in you or that thing like, no, I think you can do it. And at times, even listening to those people who feel that you can do it even when you feel you can't is so damn helpful, because it will help you push through things even though you have a
Hmm.
lot of self doubt. Like you mentioned, that your supervisor told you that if you got in,
Yeah,
you are going to get out.
right.
There's no two ways
Yeah,
about it.
and I feel that same way when a student calls me. I'm always going to say yes, and it's not an inconvenience at all. And I'm really grateful to be able to help.
Definitely. I just had one last question for you, which is for any person who is feeling lost and who thinks that maybe they are at the lowest point in their life, what is the one advice that you will give them to make them feel that their life is going to turn around, or at least they have the power to turn their lives around? What do you think they should focus on or believe when they're not feeling at their mental or physical
I
best
think
in
that
life?
if you're at a low point, take a second, take some deep breaths, step back, and it's like, okay, who in my life really wants to help? Or who can I rely on? It's like, hey, I'm really having a tough time. It could be your parents, it could be your best friend, it could somebody's out there, somebody's always been there at my lowest with like one time it was my 10-year-old daughter that helped when I was in a situation where I just was at a low. Or it was a friend of mine in LA when I was at my lowest point. Or sometimes it's my dog who's been with me for 10 years, you know. But there's always, in my case, it may not be for everybody, but there's so many people that you may not even realize that are cheerleaders for you or mentors or a support system for you. And with me, I realized that those lows are very short lived, and I just had the ability to step back and say, okay, who in my network cares about me? And I started writing down the names of who I could call, and there was so many names, and I was like, wow, okay, well, I'm okay. I'm okay because I can call this person, or I can reach out to this person. And the one thing that also helped was I started what's called a gratitude log. It was just a book. I would show up on campus 15 minutes early, and I would sit up, up out in the sun, and I would just write things that I was grateful for. And starting my day off with just what I was grateful for completely changed my mindset. I was like, oh man, I have a lot of great things in my life. So I just started my day off great, and and then it became a habit. And looking back on that log, I had so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, so from what you mentioned, it's more about like this is a quote that is actually my status, which is when you focus on
Hmm.
the good gets better. And I think focusing on something that you're grateful for on a daily basis, even I practice this, wherein I just write like a set of thank yous for all the things that I feel I'm grateful for in my day. And when I do that, although my day has not been the most productive or didn't go the way I want, it just makes me feel that despite that, there were so many things that
Hmm.
I am still grateful for. So that's okay. And tomorrow is going to be something different. So, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your story so openly with us today. And I'm sure all the listeners, especially international students, are going to have so many important takeaways from this. And I would urge everyone to read your book, Unsealed. I'm going to put all the links to your book in the description, also your personal website, your social media handles, so that people can follow you, reach out to you, and I'm sure that they will find ways to, come up with things that help them to move ahead in their journey. And if not, there is always you and me to help people who hit us up on LinkedIn or any other social media handle. So thank you once again for
Of
coming
course.
on
And
this
the one thing I want
podcast,
to add
Mark.
to your international students, the digital copy of the book is I price it at $1 for international students. So, hopefully the if you want to read the book and you want to have access to it and say, oh, I don't have X amount of dollars, it's that price is for you and younger students who, money could be tight, and it's like, okay, well, I have $1, so that was my way of giving back to, because I grew up as a socioeconomically, I was very poor, and sometimes $1 was all I had. So if you have that dollar, that pricing is for you.
Yep, and I would totally urge anyone that Mark's book is something that is worth reading. And also, if you own the hard copy, you could keep rereading it whenever you feel low in your life. And if not the hard copy, like Mark said, you can always go for the digital copy, which is just $1, right? So, yeah, thanks once again, Mark. And it's such a pleasure
Yeah,
to
sure.
speak
Thank you
with you
so much. I've,
always.
I've had a great time. And please always reach out if you need anything. And if we want to have a part two, just let me know.
Of course, we'll have a part two. I know that you'll definitely come up with some other book or some great initiative again, and we are definitely going to have a part